Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and this is the new generation of BMW's styled up X2, and it has a little bit of picante added to it because this is the M35i trim. And thanks to our friends at International BMW, we're going to show you the best and the rest of this car and just how it stacks up against some of its main rivals. Let's get into it. Number one, hold on. Little very subtle shifts. I love it. Very cool. Anyway, the first thing that we have to talk about is it is allegedly fractionally slower, but this is speculation. And the speculation is based off of the 2024 GLA 35. For 2024, Mercedes is dropping the almost 400 horsepower GLA 45, and it's going to give you the 302 horsepower GLA 35. Now that 302 horsepower number is 10 less than you'll get here in the BMW, but Car and Driver does speculate that that 35 will jump to 60 in about 5 seconds dead, or 0.2 seconds quicker than this X2. However, we all know BMW's tendency to be a little bit reserved, a little bit conservative with things like horsepower numbers and 0 to 60, and the reality is that whatever these things say on paper, I mean, they feel plenty quick on the road. And they're plenty fun. And this next point, I'm guessing a lot of actual buyers may or may not really care about. But under the skin, it is a mini chassis, which means it is front-wheel drive first in terms of its chassis development. And it has a transverse-mounted engine rather than a longitudinal. However, you have to be right around the limit to actually feel the downside. You really won't run into many issues on the road. And the X2s, like the X1s, all get xDrive all-wheel drive as standard. And there's a lot of magic stuff happening with the differentials and under the skin to keep things feeling sporty and dynamic. So the reality is you don't really feel the MINI-ness here unless you're at the absolute ragged edge of performance in this thing. Otherwise, it's just a nice BMW subcompact SUV. The next thing I want to talk about is the transmission. Now this X2, just like the X1 sibling, also gets the 7-speed DCT rather than the ZF 8-speed kind of torque converted automatic that all the other rear-wheel drive BMWs get. The 7-speed here is a blast when you're stomping on it, as you saw in the last time we were behind the wheel. But when you just want it to be like refined and civil, going through a parking lot smoothly, the DCT just isn't quite as willing to do that. But you did buy something that says M35 on the back, so you'll probably want to drive it pretty hard, and for that, it's quite good. Excellent shift. But with that covered, let's talk about all the great things about this X2. And the first thing that we'll talk about, as you might expect in something like an X2 review, is the styling. And I have to say, I don't usually like these coupé SUVs, but here, I think they pulled it off. The style looks very baby X6, and I actually do kind of like it. The grille bleeds into the lower fascia, which is classic now from the X6 and X5, but you get an illuminated grille surround. Your radar detector is in the grille, and it's pretty apparent if you look close enough, but that's kind of par for the course now, seeing that the new 5 Series has that too. But you do get new running lights from the X5, X6, and the new 4 Series, and you get a very aggressive face, to be sure. Around the side, you get 20-inch wheels with M logos, you get red or blue brakes, and you get the same style door handles that I had in my '99 Honda Accord. Of course, they're to reduce drag and that sort of thing, but just something that's kind of fun. But the profile itself is pretty clean and handsome. The rear design is a little bit more extreme with a wild rear wing that I absolutely love, and the taillights almost feel more angelized than the headlights. Your center roundel is now the trunk release, which is something that they may have taken from Mercedes or VW, because I've not seen that in a BMW before, at least not anything that I've tested. And down below you do have quad tips, despite this not being a full M car. And your M logo on your 35i is way bigger than the actual 35i, which is something that we originally saw in the new 5 Series. But again, ultimately, it's just one of the few coupe SUVs that I actually find handsome. So, well done, BMW. And then there's the fun. This car is bigger than last year, yes. So the concerns are that it got too bloated to be fun. And my answer is no. The engine here is a honey. It's 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, 312 horsepower, same 295 pound-feet as you would get from the normal X2. The transmission, like we said, is that 7-speed DCT. Really, really rewarding. Lots of snap when you do drive it hard. And then in terms of performance, 0 to 60 with this all-wheel drive xDrive standard, 0 to 60 5.2 seconds, and it sounds pretty good while it's doing it. This even has adaptive suspension for the maximum refinement. We're on terrible roads right now. I'm even in sport and I'm not being killed. And then if you want to go into personal or efficient, it'll soften back even further. But ultimately, it is just fun. There's a level of unseriousness, a level of levity that I got from like the JCW Minis that I just loved. And that essence is kind of captured here. And then when it comes to size and practicality, this thing is a lot bigger than it was last year, and that comes to great benefit for the cargo space and the rear seat space. The car itself is 7.6 inches longer than last year, which is a huge difference. It's now 2 inches longer than its X1 sibling, and 2.5 inches taller than it was last year. It's also an inch wider than it was last year. And in terms of the trunk, that means you now get 25.3 cubic feet of space. It's actually pretty big. It's actually about the same size as the non-slopey roofed X1. Plus you get some underfloor storage, and you can knock the seats down, and when you do, you get about 51 cubic feet of space. The X1 does offer 57, so it will still get you a little bit more room, but again, that's due to the stylistic roof. And then in terms of the rear seats, the X1 I was actually pretty comfy in, and this may be 2 inches longer than that, but it's not exactly roomy. Headroom is a little bit of an issue, as you might expect with the roofline. But you do get amenities like chargers, pockets, and air vents in the back seat. So ultimately it comes together to be shockingly practical for something with the coupified body style. And then in terms of features, it's a BMW, and you can expect that you're gonna get a lot of stuff here. You want a panel roof? This one doesn't have it, but you can get it. Your front seats are heated, not cooled, and you get a heated steering wheel with 3 different levels, which is pretty amazing. You do have memory seats here for 2 different people, and your seats here, the suede with the blue stitching and the M piping, are pretty cool, but if you go for the M Pro package, they're even cooler, and you get a logo that lights up. And then in terms of your technology, no head-up display here, but you do get a 10.25 digital instrument cluster with quite a bit of customizability, and you get a 10.7-inch center screen. It's running iDrive 9, your climate controls are updated and are a little bit less cumbersome, and you've got wireless Apple CarPlay. You've also got the adaptive content that I love. You don't have a 360 camera here, but I believe you can get it, and your wireless charger is still one of my favorite things. It's got a little seat belt in there like it's riding a roller coaster, and it has ambient lighting surrounding it. It's very Gatsby feeling. So overall, plenty of stuff in here to make it feel modern and upscale. And then of course we have to talk about price a bit. This one might be jumping the gun a little bit, since the only GLA 35 on Mercedes-Benz website is the 2023, and it technically starts $1,000 less than the new X2 M35i. The M35i here starts at $51,600, so exactly $1,000 more than the GLA, but the 2024 GLA 35 is rumored to go up $7,000, up to $57,600 to start, which is a lot more than I expected, but it does put the Benz back ahead of the BMW on price, which means of course everything is back to right in the world. But I want to talk about the general interior design and feel here, because there's some interesting things going on. Ultimately, it does feel very X1, which is a good thing. It's not the most high-end materials, but your dash won't creak when you push on it like in a Benz. You do get Bowers & Wilkins, and the speaker covers are really awesome. You get ambient light everywhere, and the newer M Sport steering wheel is really cool. Here we have the Alcantara dash option, bringing a little bit more class and performance feel to it, and you have this brushed aluminum dash with all these individual lines with a little bit of red accent in there for, again, just some added personality. You do have an iX style center console with a little shift tab, and it kind of floats. It's interesting. It doesn't give you a lot of covered storage because it is open underneath, but I guess it does look pretty cool. I guess the big question then becomes, does this feel a lot cheaper inside than something like an X3? And the answer is not really, no. Maybe if you're really, really looking for something like the door handle here, but ultimately, it still feels very luxe and very BMW, and I think it looks cool and interesting too. X2 M35. Foot down. Excellent shift. Great brakes. Great brakes. Let me control it. Oh, yes. Big fan. Hey, keeps throwing me up into third. All right, we're gonna chill it out because these are public roads, and I'm trying to be less of a nuisance to society in 2024 here, especially when we have public works people on the road. Safety is paramount. Anyway, X2 M35i. This thing is a little ripper. I really like it more than I thought I was going to. I like the styling more than I thought I was going to. The interior, maybe it's not, you know, the highest quality. You know, it's not like 7 Series level of quality, although I don't know why you'd expect that, but it has loads of character and personality. Look at the detailing on the dash, the speakers. Like, it does genuinely feel special in here. And then the driving experience, again, we'll throw it into sport here because we've got a little bit of room. What are you doing? Brakes, shift down. Excellent shift. Excellent transmission. Now this, of course, is the 7-speed DCT. It's not the ZF 8-speed that you would get from pretty much everything else. This and the X1, built on the Mini chassis with the 2.0, get the 7-speed DCT. And when you're on it like that, and you're shifting near redline, you're gonna get that slight, very subtle little pop. And it's very cool, it's very good. But when you want it to just be like a normal, you know, just get through a parking lot really smoothly, it doesn't do that as well. In terms of steering, not a lot of feedback. Not a lot of feel from the steering. It does load up at higher speeds, it does load up a little bit through a corner, but not a lot of information coming through here. Kind of par for the course with, you know, modern BMWs, but ultimately it's fine. What I'm impressed with is the sophistication of the suspension and the ride. Even in sport here, on these terrible West Dallas roads, I'm like pretty comfortable, like significantly more comfortable than in my own M340, which is, you know, the longer wheelbase, you know, more true BMW chassis, everything, Clar, blah, blah, blah. And this is, it feels more refined, it feels more sophisticated, there's a little bit more travel. Now this does have the adaptive suspension, where mine doesn't. So I think that is a big help, but even in sport, in its most aggressive setting, it is more refined, it is more civil, it's more, you know, on the road. It's a good thing. Where it does kind of fall down a little bit then is when you are driving it pretty hard. If I were to take this thing to a track, I think some of the front wheel drive mini chassis stuff would start to expose itself. When you're at 9/10, 10/10, you'll get a little front end understeer, a little push. Some of that stuff might start to show its head, but on the road, I think it makes sense. What I'm trying to say is I think it makes sense that they didn't call this an X2M. They call it an X2 M35i. Because I think that definitely fits the personality of the car. Turning radius is incredible. Let's just have it again. Oh. That is pretty fun in an X2. For the money, that's pretty good. And I think with that, it's probably a good time to get into the final thoughts. So that is the best and the rest of the new X2, at least in M35i trim. And I have to say, I ended up liking this car more than I thought I would. It's got plenty of style, it's got good character and personality behind the wheel, and it's still big enough to be practical. So thanks again to our friends at International BMW for letting us have a go in their new X2 M35i, and we'll see you in the next one.